Welcome to episode 15 of the Give Us Time podcast, the podcast that highlights the extraordinary members of our armed forces and their families. This episode, we have an extraordinary guest. She's the CEO and founder of Recruit for Spouses. For those of you who don't know, Recruit for Spouses is an independent social enterprise dedicated to supporting, championing, and finding gainful employment for our amazing armed forces spouses and partners. It launched in 2009 to help wives and partners into work. Since then, they have helped almost 6,000 partners of military workers, mostly wives, into jobs around the country. She has won the Women in Defence Award, David Cameron's Big Society Award, and she's been granted a fellowship at the Royal Academy of Arts. So we are honoured to welcome Halef Kendrick onto the podcast. Halef, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Alex, for having me here.
And the first question I want to go and ask you, if you can let the listeners know a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Oh, where did I grow up? Gosh, I grew up in a small town called Goodwick in Pembrokeshire in Wales, which is a beautiful part of the country, which is far, far away from here. But yeah, I grew up there. I was very lucky to have a lovely childhood and grew up there.
Oh, absolutely brilliant. So do you have a military background at all then?
No, not at all. So when I went to school, I left school with not many qualifications. I was into horses. I was mad about horses.
Amazing.
So I had this dream of riding in the Olympics when I was kind of 15, 16 and didn't really listen to my parents. So I went abroad. I went to America at 17 and I worked for the American Olympic team, and then I worked for the Canadian Olympic team for a short while, and then went to Australia and New Zealand and worked for the New Zealand team. So that was took a good 10 years of my life traveling around and riding horses and falling off horses. But I met some amazing people and got to ride some great horses and went, to various different Olympics. And yeah, it was just, I learned so much from those people I worked with around if something's not right in your immediate environment, you just change it. So when I finally settled down and got married, it was a bit of a shock to system. I was in my early 30s and all of a sudden there I was as a military wife and not working. And it was really strange. And I remember asking all of the spouses that were on we lived at Deepcut at the time. And, I knew nothing about the military. I just was very wet behind the ears. And yeah, I just found it a really odd sort of place, really, because in the sense there was an amazing community. I think I remember when my son was born, I had literally 3 weeks of meals delivered to my door from all these amazing women. I didn't even know some of them had people. One of the ladies, Jules, on the patch at the time, had arranged for every single spouse or partner on the patch to actually cook a meal for me and my husband, which was delivered to my door every single night for the best part of 3 weeks, which was incredible. And I had people that were they had their husbands. It was when we were in Afghanistan, so they had their husbands on tour, they had children of their own, and they still did it. And I just remember at that time it really hit me how amazing a community that we were sort of we were in. And that when I tried to get work, I found it really difficult. And so I asked them, how do you work? And they all said, forget it, don't even go there, don't go, we've lost our careers. A lot of people say, you knew what you knew what you were getting yourself in for. You knew that when you got married that this was going to be difficult, but you don't actually know until you're living it how difficult it is. The regular moves, and something I noticed about the people around me was that they just had an amazing ability to just get things done. And we don't complain. We have to move a lot, move the children. Husbands are away a lot, wives are away a lot. So it was really challenging, and it was understanding that. So I spent the best part of the early sort of years of two and a half years really researching and I remember carrying Harry, he's nearly 12 now, but carrying him around as a tiny little baby and knocking on doors. I'm sure there's spouses out there that they will remember. And I'd say to them, did you work? And my name is Helen, I'm just asking. And they said, yeah, we did work. But we really missed it. And there was doctors and surgeons and physiotherapists, all these incredible people that had these amazing careers. And they just said, can't get a job for love of money. You can't even get a job in the local supermarket because they see that they know that you're going to move on because of your address. And there were actual recruitment agencies that would know the name of the road that the spouses were on. So they were actually if they'd say, the people say, pretend you live on a different street, name a different street. But recruitment agencies were savvy to this. So they'd say, you've just moved to the area and you're living in, I don't know, Gloucester or Andover. Whereabouts are you living? What street are you on? And then it would be like, they'd immediately know that they were a military spouse. And if so spouses were really, and other spouses would say, just don't say do not say anything about being related to the military. So that's really how it started. And yeah, it was a very long, long journey to where we are today.
I've got about 100 questions from that. I'm going to go with my first one, which is, so how did you meet your husband when you were out working with the Olympic teams, when you were out, or was it back in the UK or Australia, or?
So I came back from New Zealand, and then I started working in horse racing because I realised there was no point in me trying to become a rider, because that was just a failure on so many levels. So I decided to start to be a writer, because I've always wanted to write. So I ended up being an editor for European trainer magazine. So I was interviewing trainers and jockeys, and I loved that job. I was going to the races, and I was interviewing all the I did a little bit with Channel 4 for a bit, and I just loved that bit of it. Sort of interested in it. I wasn't actually a journalist, because people don't say I was, but I'm more reporting on horses' injuries and trainers and that sort of thing. So I was working for a trainer and met my husband that way. So yeah, he knew nothing about horses, and I knew nothing about the military.
What was it like entering that military world then, as for someone who was new to it, or what was that experience like?
Oh, I think the first thing I found really odd, and all my friends like, oh, it's going to be great, you're going to be going to balls and moving to lots of different places. Your civilian friends think you have this really odd life of dressing up and going out to balls, and it's just dinner nights are great, but it was, my first impressions were quite, wow, what an amazing community, but equally that you were just the wife of, and so you lost all identity. So everything was in your husband's name. You were, when you went to a dinner night, you had no life. You weren't expected to work, and the questions were asked like, so nobody ever said, what do you do? Because they just assumed that you didn't work, so you had no identity. And I found that really strange, that they just weren't interested in what the wives were doing. So yeah.
So I mean, that kind of follows into my next question, really, of then, if you had kind of already answered that, of what was there any transition to becoming a military spouse then? But you've kind of already explained the challenges that were already there. So I mean, I'm going to kind of ask it anyway. What was the transition like becoming a military spouse? Because obviously all these words pop up when people say military spouse. I think the main word you always see is resilient. I think is a word that I always see flying around. We always see flying around. What was it like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I talk for so many other spouses when we talk about, we're funny enough doing a resilience week at the moment with our teams, and so many military spouses will say, I'm not resilient, and I don't like this word resilient, stop using it. But we talk about it in a way because you're often put in situations that you don't want to be in the sense that you've just settled into a new area, you think you're going to be there for another year, you've made a couple of friends, the local cafes, you've got a little routine going, found a good, you just found a few things, where just you found your little tribe, and then all of a sudden he comes home and says, we're moving in 6 weeks, and you're like, but I don't want to move. And it's like, you haven't got any choice. And I think it's being put in that situation that so many regularly, or I'm going on tour. I'm going on tour for 6 months. What do you mean you're going on tour? I've just got a tiny baby, I'm pregnant. You can't go on tour. And it's these things that it's not of any fault. It's just the nature of the job. It's just the nature, but you just get used to it. You get used to moving into a house that you had your kitchen was okay, the next one is awful, the next bathroom is awful, the next garden is nice, but the bathroom or the school is great and the garden is terrible, or you're living in front of a pylon, or the next one is a great beautiful garden with lovely views. So every time there's a new challenge, there's a new opportunity, but equally there's always, every opportunity lies is sort of every good bit, there's always good and bad wherever you go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what made you then want to start Recruit for Spouses? You obviously saw, but you spoke previously about this, there's this gap that's going on right now. But you'll be able to explain it far better than I will. So
the first thing is belligerent. I think I just felt that it was really unfair, that it was all about and I don't mean this in a negative way, it was all about the men, it was all about them. Your husband was going out, getting fit, promoting, having this amazing career, and yet we were just left to stay at home, and we expected to stay at home, and there was nothing else. That was it. And it's no fault of the military, it's not their fault. They recognize us as these people, but that was it. We were just wives that stayed at home, and that was it. And I just felt that was really unfair, because there was this amazing community that could actually add value to the military community, not just because a happier wife and you've got happier family life, and the basic needs like being able to go and see your parents if they're 200 miles away, just getting in the car, or going out for lunch, or the basic needs that if you don't have your own money, having your own money and earning your own money, I think is so important for military families. And they need to have two incomes. It's no longer nice to have. People talked so much about, only one income family, but actually we needed to earn money and buy our own homes. And I think it was such a necessity at that time. But the interesting thing was that moment was how much people said it wouldn't change, and that it wasn't going to change. And going back to the days when I worked for a really great New Zealander, and he'd won the gold medal Olympics, and he'd won 2 golds at the Olympics, and he'd won the World Championships that year. And I never forget, he was being tested at this dressage, which is, you'd only sort of simulate it if you know horses to ballet, I suppose. And you're marked by 3 judges. And he came back, and this one mark was wrong. And he said, "That's wrong." And somebody turned around and said, "But you can't question the judge. The judge's decision is final. You cannot change that." And he got off the horse, he handed it to me, and he said, "Watch me." And I was like, everybody was like, no, don't change it. You can't ask the judge. And everybody's stopping up to the judge's box and saying, "Why did you mark me wrong?" And nobody had ever done that. And he came back, and they actually changed it. They changed the rule. And he said, you can change things. You've just got to ask, and don't be rude about it. But so I had that inside of me. I thought, I'm just going to help 4 spouses on my patch. That's all I'm going to do. That's why it's called Recruit 4 Spouses. And the name was a couple of glasses of wine and a few friends. And everybody just thought I was totally barking. And even Neil came home one night, and I said, "I've got this idea. I'm going to start Recruit Spouses." And he said, "Oh my God, are you mad?" So it started small, really, at the beginning. I think was key, and that's how it did. It started small.
Oh, but now, I mean, it's become so much bigger now. What was one of the most challenging aspects of getting it to where it is now?
I could talk for hours, days. I bore you with it.
Oh no! I'll ask for the most specific one. We'll say the most specific challenge that jumps out. Then.
Well, there's so many. I mean, my father, within 3 weeks of launching Recruit Spouses, my dad had a really serious stroke. So I had to, I was living in Wiltshire, at the time. And I was driving, so Neil was again working, had 2 very, very young children. I think my son was he was 18 months old. And so I'd bundle him in the car at the end of the day, and I'd drive down to Wales, and I was sort of semi-caring for my dad. And Dad had a really serious stroke. And that was a huge challenge, of starting a business and doing that, and having 2 dogs and a husband in the army. But for me, it was a focus. It was something I needed. It just needed to be done. I needed to do something. And I just felt that, and I always made it about the spouses. It was never about me. It was always their voice. And when we registered, we had hundreds of people emailing how desperate they were. And I knew that there's so many people that want to work. And still to this day, there's spouses that need that support and need that nurturing. So it was that propensity to just get it done and make some change, really.
Oh, wow. What do you think? I mean, you know way better than myself. What is still the biggest challenge than facing military spouses and partners at the moment?
I think the military as a whole is changing so much now, and it really is. And again, I always say to my team, I've got a brilliant team, and I couldn't do any of it without them now. Don't forget how it feels to be that spouse sitting at home with the husband gone out or wife gone out to work, and you just think, what do I do? I don't know anybody. I've just moved to the area. I'm feeling a bit low. When you can't even reach out, just don't forget how that feels, because when they email in, we've got to be that support for them. We've got to be there for them. And I think the military is changing at such a prodigious speed, so fast, that we actually have to stop and think, what can we do, what's best for this person here? So every person has a unique challenge or a unique need. And I think, for example, the Navy, I speak about that a lot. They're away. I spoke to Anna Wright, who's the CEO of the Naval Families Federation, and you know, she's another lady, and obviously you should speak to. The naval families are very much. There's a lot of demand on them at the moment. Away a lot on sea draft, and they have little shore drafts. They aren't very long, and when during COVID, when they come back, they've had the serving personnel have to go into isolation. So they're really feeling that, and our teams that are working, that are Navy spouses, are really feeling that. So there's a lot of emphasis around separation, and we support that now, is separation. So there is a lot of work that still needs to be done around supporting spouses in work as well as into work.
Yeah. How do you deal with it? Obviously, because the British Armed Forces are scattered all over the world. Do you expand just from the UK? Because I know there's places all over the world, from Germany to America.
Yeah, we've got spouses all over the world. We're helping spouses. The great thing that we love is that they register with us. They can register anywhere in the world, and we can coach them. We're coaching spouses all over the world at the moment, and they will come back to the UK and be ready to work, which is a great thing. So we can literally just hit the ground running, which is really exciting. So that's a huge thing for us, and our coaching program is integral to that sort of success, really.
Oh, brilliant. Can you just explain to our listeners then what Recruit for Spouses, what you can do for military spouses? There's a military spouse listening right now who isn't in work. What could you do for her or him?
I think the first thing that a military spouse thinks of is, oh gosh, I couldn't think, no, I can't even think about work. And they put all these barriers up. I talk a lot about Mel, who used to work for us. She worked for Jamie Oliver for 10 years, and she lived next door to me. And she had so many skills, and she'd worked for him for 10 years, done all his book work, all his TV work, had these amazing stories, but she was so modest. And I remember with a glass of gin and say, come on, just do a couple of hours for me. She said, no, I couldn't. And she wasn't even really on LinkedIn, or had no sort of self-belief really, and confidence in her own abilities. And we were very, very lucky to have her. And I describe spouses a bit like fledgling birds, as they're in the little nest, and they kind of look as if they start to fly, and then they go back to the nest, and then once they fly, it's gosh, I cannot tell you the amount of times I hear these stories nearly every day now of our spouse, that you hear that first phone call with them, and they'll say, oh gosh, I'm working in Aldi at the moment. I don't really know what I can do, but I've got to move. And I'm like, well, we put them on the coaching program, and now they're like directors, or they're managing teams, and it's so amazing to see. But the most important thing is it doesn't matter what they're not doing or what they're doing. We will just get them. And if they need coaching, we do a really good, I had to, talk about it the other day, a wheel of life, which is in the coaching. We really look at what you enjoy with a Venn diagram around what's your passion, what do you enjoy. You've got to make money out of that. And you talked about sort of the MilSpouse network, which is, we're seeing literally a revolution with military spouses, and it's so exciting to see military spouses who are starting their own businesses. But you don't always, whatever you want to do it, you can start a small business, whatever you want to do, work. We can help you and sort of direct you in that right way. But the coaching is such an integral part of that.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to be cruel now and ask you what your favourite success story is. I know you have 1,000. I know you're going to be put on the spot, but I'll just take one to make it easier.
I'm going to start with telling you a story that is my least favourite. Because I think it brings me to, it's quite emotive really, and it's very sad, but it's kind of kept me going. And I think a lot of people think my motivations are about money, but for me it's about the spouse and how we change that. And there was a time, and it was probably about 6 years ago now, where I was sitting next to a very lovely lady, I won't mention her name, and she was a nurse, and she was talking to me about how difficult she'd found moving and being a military spouse. She didn't have children. And we had this, it was a dinner night, it was very loud. We were just having this chat, and she scribbled a number down. I said, look, I'll give you a ring and we'll have a chat. And, we'll just keep, in touch. But don't worry, because we can help you. It's not a problem. I said, oh, it's fine. I'm just not in a very good place at the moment, but I will reach out and I will, look at what you do. And 3 months later, she'd committed suicide, and she lost. Yeah, she took her own life. And obviously that's not our fault. It's not nothing to do. But I think, and that's an extreme case. It really is. But that moment made me think, I'm never going to let this. I'm never going to let a spouse down again. I'm never going to not phone or not make that spouse feel that they come in through our doors and they leave feeling better about themselves. They leave feeling that they've got to do it. So my focus is so much on them and how we can help them and change their lives and really make things better for them. And then, you've got the success stories of, I mean, so many now that I can't even begin to tell you. People who haven't worked for many, many years. People, I mean, Fijian community, we're supporting a lot of the Fijian community now. We're supporting a lot of special forces spouses and people that have not worked for so long. But when you see them get some skills, it's, we had one lady recently who was in and out of our support network for about 5 years. And she had coaching and she did a few jobs here, a few jobs there. And then we put her on to Virgin and she was a customer service sort of thing. And we got the phone call from Virgin, from Richard Branson's team in New York, saying they liked her so much, they've offered her a job as director to one of their communications teams. And for me, I mean, that made my year. I was just so happy for her because her husband was medically discharged. She's got a disability. She's got 3 young children. And you just think, gosh, that's the team that's doing it. It's nothing to do with me. And I get random things sent to me. Like I had brownies last week sent to me from someone I've never even met because she'd got a job. And you see these women, and they're men as well, that are getting these incredible jobs. And I feel so happy and such pride for them because I know that if they're working in gainful employment where they're really feeling empowered, the change in the community is incredible, really. It really is. It's so incredible.
That's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I think one of the things that's shining through is just how passionate you are about it, which is I think fantastic. I think that was, I mean, what do you think, considering, I mean, we have spoken about that briefly, but what do you think, what's the best thing about being a military spouse? Because obviously we've spoken about the hardship of trying to find work and then moving around and everything. There's obviously another side to that as well. What do you think what's the best thing about being a military spouse in your opinion?
I think you can deal with stuff really well. I just think you throw a problem at a military spouse and they will sort it out. And Virgin are seeing this now. We've got a team of spouses that are working 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they just keep putting more and more pressure on them. And they say they don't break. They support each other, but they don't complain. They just get on with it. So I think that ability, there's evidence now. There's actual evidence out there to demonstrate that the neural pathways are actually stronger in a military spouse than in a normal civilian, because we're being put in these regular difficult situations that we're used to just thinking, okay, so my furniture doesn't fit. I know that sounds a really basic thing. For some people, that means quite a lot, You can't really decide where you're going to live. A lot of things are taken out of your control, and you get used to dealing with all that you can control and not being in control of a lot of things. I think that teaches you so much. And I think when you speak to civilians and you hear them complaining about certain things, you try not to stifle a laugh. Not that you think you're better than them at all, but we always say that military spouses have this inner confidence that they could quite happily make coffee for everybody in the sort of office, but they'd quite happily put the bins out and then do a presentation because they're never too proud or that's not my job. They just do it. I mean, my team is incredible. They just get things done. And when clients come in, it sort of seeps out to clients because they see that as well. And they see what we're going through and they're so amazed by it, really.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great answer. I loved it. That's absolutely fantastic. But now I want to know a little bit more about you. So I want to know, where was the favorite place you were stationed? Where's the favorite place? Because I mean, where have you been? Have you been abroad as well?
I've got friends that are in Malaysia and Australia and Africa and all these amazing places. And I'm quite, America, New York, you name it. And we nearly got a posting to Australia once. I was very excited about that. But yes, my postings have been really glamorous. They've been deep cuts, they've been Gloucester,
Nice.
and Wilt Bristol. So nothing except the M4 corridor.
So as a charity that sends families away on holiday, how important was having an opportunity for a holiday and a break while your husband was deployed? Did you find that quite an important thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I've got to say, actually, Alex, that what the role that Give Us Time do is so, so important. I think it's a brilliant charity and amazing. And I think that reconnection when they come back from being overseas is so, so important, because I think the pressure on military families is such that they go away and they come back, and then all of a sudden you've got family going, come and see me, your friends, and you're pulled from position here to pillar to post. So I think for a family to actually go away somewhere where it isn't home and isn't military is so, so important. And I think it's a great, brilliant thing that you do. It really is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, hearing that from, someone like you, it's just fantastic to go and hear. And I mean, that means a lot. It really, really does. And also very, very important. I think I know what the answer is going to be to this, but what does family mean to you?
So I know what you will hear a lot of people saying that it is. My family is obviously a priority, everything to me, as everybody would say. But it's a driving force for me to be better and to strive to be better. I think, honestly, I'll be really honest, I think I've failed. I failed them a lot, because they would say, Mum's always working. Whenever she goes on holiday, she's still working. And we go back to that time of, I've put military spouses before my family on many, many occasions. And I think that's a fault of mine, I think, but I sort of said to my children, what do you think about that? And they go, oh, well, we're used to it now. But if somebody phones, if they're the doctors, I pick up the phone, and I haven't always put my children, I usually put my children first, of course, but work has been a big driver for me. And I think it's been really hard on my children, and they find it really tough. And I think that it's just because I felt that it's something that I needed to do. So they haven't, if almost anything, they really felt it the hardest, of me not being around, not being here, and quite stressed as well. Quite, well, I don't say stressed, but just a lot of things going on for us, where it would have been easier for me to go, I'm not going to do this, because as a military family takes priority over everything. And actually for me, for my children, it was tough, because I was always away working and trying to get work for spouses.
Yeah. Oh. Do you have any, I mean, it's just from your answer there, do you have any coping mechanisms then to go and deal with it? How do you to try and balance that out? Because it sounds incredibly stressful and incredibly hard.
Yeah, I mean, I've got an amazing support network of friends, supporters, everything. I'm really, really lucky, and I get supported by Veterans Aid. They're brilliant at supporting me as a person, but also my team. And I think just having that time away is really, really important with your family. We go to Pembrokeshire a lot to see family. We just switch everything off, and we just spend that time together. We've been abroad, so it's really, really important for me to spend that time with them.
Yeah.
And they do say, come on, Mum, let's switch off the computer, let's go out somewhere. But yeah, the children are great. I'm very lucky, really am.
Oh, fantastic. I actually do have one final one. And I asked this question to Jess from Millspo, and it is, what advice would you give a new military spouse entering this community? What would your advice be?
I think we get a lot of new military spouses that Google us and then reach out. I think don't be so hard on yourself. Try not to plan too much, and just embrace it. I mean, people just say that a lot, but it really is. Go next door, knock on your neighbour's door and just say hi, or just embrace the community, because they are an incredible community. And online as well, Jess's community, there's a military co-working hub. There's some amazing communities now that are supporting other military spouses. So there's a lot out there that you can get, which I wish was there when I started.
Yeah. Oh, I think the most important thing now is, if there are any listeners here who are in that position, how would they go about getting in contact with you and finding you?
So we're on, if you Google recruitforspouses.co.uk, we've got a Facebook group, we're on Instagram, Twitter, we're on all social media, just Google Recruit for Spouses, we're there. But yeah, inquiries at Recruit for Spouses, they can email us any questions. And we've got coaches, we've got a coaching program that we're running. We do loads of skills, the digital skills. We're doing a lot with Facebook and Google, giving them sort of marketing digital skills, which is brilliant. And we're doing a resourcing class in April. It's all free for spouses. We get sponsored by the corporate, so we're doing that, which is, so yeah, anything they need, just get in touch.
Oh wow, sounds like you've got some really exciting projects coming up as well. Is this all new? Is this new stuff you're doing?
Yeah, it's something we were working on for a long time, and we've got a really good pipeline now. It's taken about 5 years to get it right and tweak it, but essentially we get spouses that most of them haven't worked for a long time, and we train them into being resource specialists. So they work for companies like Rolls-Royce, BAE Systems, and they work from home. They have all their laptop, everything supplied. They have a really good team. So we've got spouses, and we got obviously work with Virgin, and yes, we train them into the role, into the brand, and then they work for that company. And they usually work for us for about 6 months, and then they go and work for that company. So yeah, it's really exciting, and to see this, that they don't have to go through that awful job application and sort of applying for jobs and get rejected. So they come in to us, and if they pass all the phases, which most of them do, we put them back in for upskilling if they're not ready. Yeah, they'll get work. So that's the plan, that we are improving that pipeline of spouses into work. But yeah, we've got spouses all over the world now working in America, and yeah, it's a very exciting time.
Oh, fine. I mean, and to make it even easier for people going and listening, I'm going to put the Recruit for Spouses website and their social media in the link in the description. So if you just open that description, it will be there. So you can go and click on that, because I think, such a helpful service, such a useful service, and definitely tackling one of the problems, which I think is a recurring problem, I think, as well. So this is it. Yeah, definitely. So this has been absolutely brilliant. I think you've answered all of my questions, which has been amazing.
So lovely to talk to you, and you're so enthusiastic and very good you as well.
This has been really easy just because you've been so great. This has been so easy and so fun to do. So I think that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much, Halef, for joining us today. This has been absolutely brilliant. I mean, a really interesting podcast. Really, I think if there are any spouses and partners listening, I think this has been incredibly helpful. Like I said previously, the link will be the link for Recruit for Spouses will be in the description below. So if you want to go and contact her, click on there, and then you can send her team an email. Make sure to follow them on social media as well. They're brilliant. We follow them on social media. They're fantastic. And also make sure to follow Give Us Time on all social media. Please follow us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube. And thank you all so much for listening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Alex.